Ironically, I got the idea for this novel from being at a Christian retreat center for an evangelical meeting, but it happened to be on the grounds of a Catholic monastery. And in the room I was in, there was a crucifix on the wall, and I'd never really studied the crucifix. Like most evangelicals, I say we want to celebrate the empty tomb, not Jesus hanging on the cross. But I was just kind of looking at it and thinking about the fact that, Catholics revere this image because of the death of Christ and the atoning for sins. And I'm not sure how the connection came, but in looking at that, I started thinking about what if somebody was crucified today? I mean, it's not something we hear about. There are various other ways of execution and death. But what if somebody wanted to do that to show what it was really like? And that's where the germ of the idea came. The characters have been with me for about 40 years from high school. Both characters, one I've patterned after a teacher of mine and the other after a classmate. And they've just been sort of rattling around in my brain all this time. One is just a no-account loser, for lack of a better term, sort of a white trash kid, raised in a single-parent family, always in trouble. The other character is a pastor who becomes a chaplain in a prison. And he's one of these guys that is totally devout and a real man of prayer and has a wonderful marriage and pastors a bunch of small churches, and he's treated poorly his entire career. He's not a great preacher. He's, as I say, devout, but he never really sees much results, and his churches are small and they don't treat him well. He's often moving on to other opportunities. So these two characters, the chaplain of the prison and this no-account loser, wind up meeting later in the story because the loser commits a murder. And he's had some background in church and Sunday school from a relative. He has some basic knowledge of Jesus and heaven and hell and that type of thing. But he's never been a believer or acted like one. But when he gets on death row, he's sentenced to death. When he gets on death row, he realizes that he's really done it now, and he's going to die and he's going to go to hell. And so he asks to see the chaplain. And hopefully by this point in the story, the reader is with this chaplain, wishing that he could see some results. He hasn't seen any results in the prison any more than he saw in the little churches that he pastored for so many years. But this guy is sincere and becomes a believer. What I really hope readers come away with in reading this story is the cost of sin, what it can do to a life, and then the price that Jesus paid to cover it. And in the story I have skeptical characters who say, if God can forgive this heinous murderer and he winds up in heaven, I don't want to be there. I don't want to worship a God like that. But the fact is, we do worship a God of forgiveness and redemption. And anybody's sin can be covered and forgiven if they're sincere. And this is, this isn't somebody who slipped. This isn't somebody who had a little, fell to temptation. This is a rotten guy for most of his life who winds up committing a murder and realizing that he's going to hell. And God does forgive people like that. I mean, Christ forgave the thief on the cross next to him and said he'd be with him that day in paradise. And that man didn't have time to turn his life around and change and start being discipled. He believed in Christ, believed in the work he was doing on the cross, and he would be with him that day in paradise. That's the message.